Hello, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and the project I'm sharing today is my version of Rochelle Christensen's assemblage clock project that she posted on the Ranger Inc. website, and I loved it so much I decided I needed to do my own version. So here's what the clock looks like when you get it. It is from Tim Holtz's Idea-ology line, and it's called the Assemblage clock, and you have to take it all apart. So there are these sort of nuts around these screws, and they're very, very small on the inside of the clock, and so you have to undo all of them and then take off those bars are holding the glass in place, and so carefully remove the glass, and then you take off all the other pieces for the next step in this project. And I saved all the little bolts into a paint lid there that you see that I kind of keep random weird stuff in. And there you see all the pieces have been disassembled, and now I'm going to be using alcohol ink with my distressed blending tool and some felt. And so I'm putting down denim, and then this is stone washed, and then I'm going to use just the tiniest bit of meadow, which is a green, and then I'll be using it's a mixative, which is called Snowcap, so it's white. So you have to shake that first. Do not shake the alcohol inks, because believe me, that's a bad idea, as you can see from my hands. So what you do with alcohol inks is then you just pounce it onto your surface, and you kind of move the blending tool around so you don't get the same pattern. You just kind of move it as you pounce it, and you can see what happens. It transfers the color to the surface. Now, I didn't like how light that was, so I added some more denim here. And so now I'm going to kind of keep pouncing. You'll get a better idea of the color that I kind of wind up with in the end. And so you just keep pouncing it all over the surface, and it dries relatively quickly. And you do this with the entire clock and every single piece. So like even the little handle, the legs, the tiny little screws on the very top, and there you can see where I've finished them all. So now to decorate the outside, I'm going to be using my Elizabeth Craft Designs snowflakes dies and foil tape. So foil tape is basically aluminum foil with adhesive on the back, and I'm going to do the exact same alcohol ink method with it. So this is denim, and now I'm adding Snowcap, and eventually I will add gold to this as well. I wanted to have this look similar but lighter than the surface of the clock, so that you'd be able to see the snowflakes once they are adhered down to the sides of the clock. And that's basically kind of the look I went with. And so then I take my 3 dies and I cut those out of the tape. And as you can see, the large snowflake was bigger than the width of the tape, but that's okay, because I actually use that to my advantage. So the cool thing about foil tape is that it's tape, so you just peel off the back and you can just stick it right down. And it's aluminum foil, so it's super, super flexible and bendy. And so you can just easily push it around a curved surface. And I just kind of tuck anything that's hanging over underneath onto the underside of the bell on the clock. And then here is where that cut off portion of the snowflake won't even matter, because you won't even see it, the way I'm going to stick it down onto the other side of the bell and just tuck it in underneath. You'll never know that this wasn't a complete snowflake cutout. And then when I do it on the body, you'll see that I actually lined it up with the edges, so it works really, really well with the cut piece on that large piece. So sorry I get off camera here a little bit. But you will see here in the end how I get it adhered to the side. So this is another one of those big snowflakes, and I'm taking the straight cut edge where it didn't cut through with the die, and I'm just lining it up with the back of the clock perfectly, and then just squishing it down. And so I do that on both sides of the clock, and then finish off the other bell, and that is it for the foil tape. And now I'm just tracing out the size of the background for the inside of the clock. And so here I'm going to do some distress blending with distress inks and my blending tool to get a night sky. Now, this is not a tutorial on how to do a distressed blending night sky. I have a couple other videos that will show you that in great detail. So if you want to do this and you've never done it before, I would suggest watching one of those first. But hopefully many people watching this already know how to do this. So I'm basically just blending on multiple colors of distress ink starting with the lightest, which is Blueprint Sketch, and then I move to Chip Sapphire, and then this is Dusty Concord, and then I will finally go to Black Soot. And I'm doing this on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I had never used Bristol before, and I have some mixed feelings about it in terms of the Distress inks. Part of it is really nice because it's really, really smooth, and so the blending is really smooth, but I felt that it kind of just, each layer just kind of covered the layer in front rather than blending it together. So I wound up going back and adding every color back on top of the black, which was okay. Like the result is okay. But here's the really great part about it is when you spray it with water, like I'm doing here with my Distress sprayer, and then you blot it with a paper towel, it pulls the ink off really, really well. So that was a really great effect with that paper. And here's a stamp set I used for the interior, and it's from Paper Tray Ink, and it's called City Scene, and it has a bunch of buildings, and the buildings each have 2 layers. So there's like a base layer and then a detail layer. But I wanted to keep this entirely like white and gray. So I am just using the detail layer on white cardstock, and I'll be using 2 Altenew inks. I'm using Evening Gray, which is this color, which is the lighter of the 2, and then I will use Moon Rock, which is the slightly darker gray. And I'm going to stamp a bunch of these buildings all along this piece of white cardstock, and then I will cut most of them out with the matching dies except for one, and one I am going to turn into the cash register building, which is probably the most well-known architectural feature of Denver, since I live in Denver. So I'm trying to kind of simulate the Denver skyline, if you will, in my little scene. So with one of these, I will just cut it out manually, and I'll add that like kind of cash registery top on top of the building by hand using some distress markers in Hickory Smoke and Pumice Stone. And I actually draw 2 additional buildings like you see on the ends there with the Pumice Stone and the Hickory Smoke. Now, the other dies I used are also Paper Tray ink, and this is called the Scene It Mountain View die set, and there are 2 of those mountains that you cut out. So the gray ones are the 2 different ones. And I'm going to layer those together, and then I'm going to layer that on top of the white. And you can see my little city is set out the way I'd like it. And you can kind of maybe see the cash register building there, which is the tallest one. But we'll look at that later. So another thing about these mountain dies is that the snow-capped peaks pop out when you die cut them. So you can have like purple mountains and put white tops on them, or if you want. So I wanted to add distressed glitter to these. So I am taking my glossy accents, and I am going to put glossy accents all over every single one of these little pieces and then coat it with some distressed glitter. And this is Clear Rock Candy, and it's beautiful and creates this really like snowy, sugary effect. So now I've trimmed down my background night sky to fit the back of the clock, and I'm just taping it down here with some double stick tape. And then I'm going to lay my mountains on top and to figure out where I'm going to put them. And that first layer, which is the white layer, is going to go directly onto the back. And you can see I have re-inlaid those glittered up little mountain caps into the die at this point. And I used the double stick tape to do that. So super, super easy to just stick those right back in. And then my gray, I'm going to add some dimension to this because there's a fair amount of dimension in this clock. There's almost 2 inches of depth. So I'm going to add 2 layers of foam tape to the back of the gray mountains. And then I'll be adhering that down. And then my city is going to go on top of that. So here's my city, and I've adhered all the buildings down to a piece of white cardstock. And I'm just trying to figure out where do I need to cut this off around the edges for the city here. So now I'm adhering down the mountains, and then here's where I'm going to kind of cut off the edges of that little white piece of cardstock that's holding my city in place. And now I do add foam tape to the back of my city, but then that's how I start off. But then I wind up adding a lot more to that. I mean, I add 3 layers of cardboard and then 2 additional layers of foam tape. So I think there's 3 layers of foam tape and 3 layers of cardboard, because right now it looks good, but once you get it in the clock, it was way too flat. So I needed a lot more depth. So I added a lot more to push that out quite a bit. And then I created this little platform out of a piece of cardboard, and I cut these slots in them to feed these little tiny, they're called Merry Minis trees. And I put a lot of white paint on them to turn them mostly white. And then I glittered the heck out of them with the distress glitter as well. And so I'm gluing them down to the underside of this little platform with my quick dry adhesive. And then I have covered that platform with some white cardstock, and it folds down in front to cover those trees sticking underneath, because that is going to stick up above the glass in the clock. So I wanted it to look fairly finished, so you wouldn't see the trees sticking up. It was just too, and I could have stuck them, I guess, directly to the bottom of the clock, but it just didn't look correct, and especially with the way I had the city positioned. So it made more sense for me to kind of create this platform and lift it up. And now I'm going to add some ornament flakes to the front and the top of this tree platform. So these ornament flakes are like basically kind of shredded iridescent plastic that I'm just sticking on using double stick tape and glue. And then I will put glue all over the top of the platform and put the flakes all over that as well to kind of give it a, iridescent Christmassy look and finish it off. And here I've reassembled the clock. Was not difficult to do. And I have added some LED dewdrop lights to the inside of this. So these are stuck down to the inside edges, the sides of the clock, using these glue dots. So they're 1/2 inch craft glue dots. So they're super strong. And I basically just wound the lights all around the inside edge of the clock and stuck them down to those glue dots to keep them in place. And here's my completed interior panel. And you can see I have added like a little support piece with foam tape to the bottom of the tree platform. And then I've added cotton balls all the way around the edges to sort of fill in any spaces that were still showing open once I got it in there. And as I try to fit it in, I realized I have too much cotton on there. So I have to trim it down a little bit. And then I have to trim it down even more. And eventually I do get it in there and get the whole thing put together. Now, this looks like it didn't take long at all, but I'll be honest, it took a really long time. Like, it probably took me 2 whole days to finish this project. But that's partly because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was making it up as I was going. So to finish this off, I did cut these pine branches out using my silhouette. This is a design from the Silhouette Design Store. It comes with 3 different branches, and I cut them out in white, silver, and gray cardstock. And then I glued them down to the top of the clock using glossy accents. And then I took these little jingle bells, and they were gold, and I toned them down with the Snow Cap alcohol ink mixative to kind of make them less bright. And now I'm going to adhere those onto the top. I used like shipping tag twine on those, and I'm just going to adhere them down with a glue dot and they kind of intermingle with the branches and stay there very nicely. And then I'm going to take some ribbon and put a bow on the top as well, and you'll see that in just a second. And then that'll be the completed project. And there you can see that's with the lights off. And then I'll turn the lights back on, and I'll turn one of the overhead lights off so you can see it a little better if it were dark. And that is the completed project. And I absolutely love the way it came out. But as I was saying, this is not for the faint of heart. This is a project that is fairly involved. It was fun to do. I really enjoyed it. But just be prepared that it is going to take you probably at least a whole day to do it. But it kind of also depends on what you put on the inside. My inside was fairly complicated, and so that's what added a lot of time to the project, I'm sure. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that I gave you a little bit of inspiration for a very final Christmas project just before the big day. As always, there is a supply list linked below in the video description. And here are 2 more videos that I've done that show how to do a Distress Ink night sky in much more detail. So if you're interested in learning how to do that, please click on either one of these for a lot more information on that. Merry Christmas. If you liked the video, I'd be thrilled if you give me a thumbs up, and I'd be even more thrilled if you subscribed. Thanks.